Alright, hello there,
What's
folks.
going on?
This is going to be our test run for a new podcast. I hope you enjoy. Today we're going to talk about Nazi dick riding. And,
Yeah, I brought my saddle,
yeah, sweet. And,
the one with the SS runes on it.
but yes, very well. And we're going to be talking about Nazi Germany, truths and falsehoods. So, how can we talk about the 1920s, stuff like this? How did, Nazi Germany come to be?
I think, for me, I definitely think the reason the Nazis came to power was just a huge vacuum left by. Well, actually, backtrack. The only reason they were able to happen, in my opinion, is because the Germans were not used to representative democracy at all, and they didn't know what not to look for, what's not acceptable, and they were new to democracy in general. That's why someone could like Hitler could just usurp all the powers. I mean, it was their first real democracy, and they've fucked it up in like 20 years.
It's true.
So, but he did do some demagoguing, and when you say, "Oh, he was a nationalist demagogue and whatnot," all of Europe or all of European societies, if not the world, like all societies across the globe, especially in the 20s, were nationalist in general because postmodern thought hadn't really been shoved down everyone's throats until after World War II, when you see what happens when nationalism goes full force.
Like anti-nationalism, sort of stuff like that.
Yeah, like supranationalism or
Supra or
yeah, supra.
Okay.
I'm a super nationalist, not a supranationalist.
Okay.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying?
I think so.
Yeah. So, fucking up aspects. I'll talk about the aspects of the ideology.
All right. Well, I mean, also,
We can edit that out.
Yeah, it's fine. Also, I think even I know that definitely part of Nazi culture was established a lot of the nobles in legends and fables and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
When it came to this sort of Aryan race and everything wasn't really a new idea.
Mm-hmm.
When it came to Germany, even in fact, I remember reading in one of my history books World War I was already they were already talking about race-based ideology in World War I and stuff like that.
Didn't wasn't a big part of Nazi ideology was, or what might have hindered it during the war also, was a tradition in German society of a Prussian aristocracy, and so you've got the old order of a caste system, which nationalism's kind of based on. Both nationalism's rooted in traditionalism, as you know, but there's this progressive scientific element of nationalism that's really cool.
Well, I don't
Not
think
cool,
I don't think the progressive modern. I mean, I think that's more Hitlerism in general. He was able to get he was able to mix traditionalism and modernism. Look at all the new society we're moving towards, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I mean. So he was his kind of broader ideology was the German speaking Aryan race, and then his hierarchy was definitely based more off of ethnicity and race than it was what maybe old monarchists that would align themselves with Nazis in Germany at the time. They would say that it's more of a social class that's more important, and but they were bedfellows, and then Hitler kind of merged them. I know one of his generals he asked to kill himself, commit suicide in Stalingrad, said I'm not going to kill myself for this Bohemian corporal.
Seriously?
Yeah, or Bavarian for this. I'm not going to lay down my life for this corporal from Bavaria.
Shit.
Yeah, so that part of the ideology, Hitler and Himmler's brand of nationalism was actually very progressive for the time being. Doing away with an old order when most conservatives, literally only 20 years before or 30 years before, was a monarchist war. That was World War I.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it's literally it was essentially the last sort of you don't have to look far to know, it was like sort of, it was definitely like molded as a sort of, you know, summer war and shit like that. It was definitely, I mean, Russia was I mean, not Russia, but like Prussia was definitely still at that time like the power center of Germany. Like that was where traditionalism came from and stuff like that. The sort of idea of, you know, landed aristocracy. But I also think, no, I think like when you said like Hitler was able to mold those two, like I was just trying to look on my phone, like I know like during one of his opening speeches, like one of the ways he was able to like galvanize all the sort of like disgruntled like World War I troops was he was able to get that the one general, like he was able to get the walk, like not Hindenburg.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. It wasn't
Hindenburg.
It might have been Hindenburg. But yeah, the one that did the beer hall putsch.
Yeah. He was able. I mean, I remember he was able to walk. Like I think one of his big marches, he was able to incorporate him and stuff to show that, oh yeah, he has the back of the old generals and stuff like that, the folks that like the soldiers recognize and everything like that.
Yeah, I'm looking for his name. Ludendorff,
that's what it was.
Yeah. Ludendorff. Sorry, we're new to the. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Whatever.
We're new fags. So, I have okay. Why do you think? I mean, nationalism in general is making a pretty strong comeback, and if you think about it, 60 years after the last paradigm shift of like the sexual revolution and whatnot and free love, which really was that was the beginning of the end of like 20th century conservative, the dominating not culture but just governing ideology, basically. Like even the left and the right both would agree, women should be in the house and whatnot, like that. Very rooted in traditionalism, and it all stopped in the 60s, or started to stop in the 60s. We're not even quite there yet. Why do you think people are like re-looking at the failed ideology of Nazism, National Socialism, fascism, things like that? Do you think it's because a lot of young men feel somewhat left behind? Because like it always is men that lead a nationalist movement.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like a masculine thing. Like a lot of people who feel emasculated in society will go onto their keyboards and shitpost and like shill for far right, and they'll believe it too. It's kind of like a way of and support nationalists.
No, I think it's an interesting question. No, I think that's like definitely like an interesting question. I definitely think like after like Nazism got defeated like in the 1940s, like it's the entire like aspect of, you know, like I think you even sent it to me in a text. It was like, as a hunter, like be careful not to become like the hunted or something like that. Like the fact that like when a major, like, you know, two major sort of powers and different ideologies have to fight each other, they're necessarily going to be like, there's definitely going to start resembling each other to a certain extent. That's because, I mean, that's the fact simply that because there's simply just more interaction going on, because, I mean, they're just huge, like, you know, centers of power that are necessarily going to have to face off. So I think they're going to have to more and more resemble each other. So, I mean, even though, like, we totally despise, I mean, sort of racial, like...
classification in general.
Yeah, that sort of stuff thing today. I mean, yeah, definitely, like, in the 1950s, like, we definitely see, like, you know, white society, like, you know, traditional working class, like, you know, it was definitely glorious economic boom. I mean, I definitely think you could, you know, align that with the sort of optimism and, you know, forward thinking that, you know, Germany had in the early 30s or mid 30s even.
That's what's really surprising for me is when you think about the Nazis and their writing, and it's almost like they were ahead of their time when they were their fears of, you know, miscegenation, which is, you know, race mixing. They're literally afraid of their race being extinct when there was no reason. Their race wasn't going to go, like one thing that draws people to nationalism now is the notion of white genocide in its extreme, and then other people recognize the demographic shifts. So during World War II, it was basically you didn't have multicultural hippies fighting racist Nazis. It was one conservative country aligned with another conservative country fighting the Nazis. So it was literally nation states fighting each other. Just one wanted to dominate other ones. But now it's totally different. So now if a country became a national socialist country, the closest thing to it is actually Israel. But this little side note is they that country would be like the world's greatest villain.
Like, what do you mean?
Like a country that its sole purpose is to protect like the national bloodline, like from almost like from a biodiversity standpoint. Some white nationalists today are worried that like the German nation state, the German gene pool, the English gene pool, they're all going to become hodgepodge. They're not even going to exist in their pure genetic form anymore. Some people actually really do care about that, ethno-nationalists. But what I'm saying is, when the United States was fighting Nazi Germany, they weren't fighting Nazi Germany because they were explicitly a racial ideology or a racialist ideology that governed them. It was because they were an expansionist one. So I'm just saying, like, the way we look back at it now is the noble Americans were fighting for, like, you know, the Jews and gay rights and shit. It's like
not gay rights.
No, of course not. But that's almost how, like, it's romanticized. Like, we fought the evil fascists because
we believed in freedom and liberty.
And in reality, it was no country fought for progressive ideals. They just fought for national security. But it's almost romanticized now to a point where
the narrative has been totally.
That's what I'm saying. And but that's kind of like why would that's what I'm saying. The Nazis were like ahead of their time. Like their ideology in the 40s or 30s was like a completely overblown response to,
like, just the Great Depression.
And there was like social Marxism going on in Berlin that like genuinely freaked out right-wing philosophers and whatnot, but their response was so hardcore. It feels like that response would be more appropriate now when you see what's going on now in terms of, you know, where our culture's gone than it did back then. So why do you think that happened? Why do you think, and do you think the Nazis, or we should stop calling them National Socialists, do you think they kind of ruined nationalism for like probably another 100 years, or forever even?
I mean, when you say they overreacted and stuff like that, I think an important point to make is, like, we talk about the World War I as the first, like, modern war, and I mean, essentially, Germany was obviously made the losers of that, kind of. Like, they got pulled into alliances, and they literally just got royally screwed over. I mean, Treaty of Versailles, stuff like that. So I think, like, in response to this modern war they were facing, I mean, you know, the Americans stopped funding their currency and bullshit. They went through, like, economic catastrophe. Like, I think these are all, like, the first modern issues that ever a nation had to, like, come to. And I think definitely, like, this force where, I mean, Hitler talked about, I mean, sort of modern, I think, like, it just goes with the same sort of narrative. Like, he was able to entwine, like, this sort of, like, force of modernization. Like, we can solve these modern issues. Like, no one had ever seen an economic calamity to, like, that, like, great an extent before. Like, I mean, essentially, definitely, even, I mean, people talk about, like, you know, the late 19th century as a time of economic turmoil. Like, at least Germany had Bismarck during that time. I mean, they were still necessarily expanding. I mean, Bismarck, made himself, not chancellor or emperor, like, I forgot, like, literally in Versailles. I mean, literally stepping on the feet of the French aristocracy and French prestige and everything like that. So, I mean, I think they reacted to it in such a way that was effective to a certain extent. But, I mean, it was born out of, I mean, literally rearmament, hatred, and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. That's what I'm saying. Their militarism and expansionism was kind of an expected response to a country that got totally screwed over, especially when it's a proud, rooted in military culture. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, it's more sensed towards, I mean, you know, I think of a lot of these sort of like economist types who, I mean, they see the world in class. I mean, it's kind of these post-Marxists who see like, oh, you know, well, that guy makes like 100K versus the guy who makes 150K. Let's make an analysis of the cultural differences between the two. Like, if you listen to any of Hitler's speeches, like he talks about the Volk not seeing each other as like class anymore. He talks about the Volk seeing each other. Oh, look at all my brothers and sisters in arms, stuff like that. Like it's not like I don't like I think maybe like German culture at least, or at least during that time, didn't like it was so traditional. Didn't want to like sort of it didn't want to see
restructure itself like
the
Soviet Union.
Yeah, it didn't want to restructure itself in a way that would incredibly threaten their sort of way of life and everything. I think they wanted to go back to this more, idyllic sort of sense of things, where they didn't. Their worldview was more defined in the same sort of traditionalism, which it's kind of it's really paradoxical. Actually, like they literally were a force of modernization, but at the same time, they encompassed views that are incredibly traditional.
That was like the synth, that's what they were so proud of too, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if the Holocaust didn't happen, then would we look back on Nazi Germany the same way we do now? Like, we look back at it, Hitler's got a monopoly on evil. The Nazis have a monopoly on an evil empire when their body count isn't as high as other totalitarian regimes, and it's mostly because of
Cough, Stalin.
Yeah, and it's mostly because of like the way they classified people was, if you're born a certain way, then you are just instantly, and not an enemy, but open to being treated differently than if you were born a German, and that has a lot to do with why they're so hated. But their society, up until they started doing an expansionist war, kind of was the progressive society at the time. I'm pretty sure even the New York or Time magazine and
even
liberals in America at the time are progressives, because they weren't really postmodern liberals that we know today.
No, even the New York
hailed it.
The New York Times was even like writing after even the invasion of Paris. Was writing like positive pieces about Hitler, saying about how he was just like wartime intellectual, stuff like that. Like he literally he's a general in his spare time. During those weekends, he goes off and like reads like Will Wagner pieces and stuff like that. Like he's really like established, cultivated, definitely like perspective, global kind of guy, stuff like that. Like knows how to play the diplomacy game, knows how to do this, and like they literally were playing up to him. Like people don't realize that it wasn't some like big looming, oh God, Hitler's coming. Like no one was thinking that. Or
Churchill was.
Oh yeah, there was definitely the war. There's definitely the war, like the war aspect to it. But let's not you have to realize the narrative that's been formed around him was formed afterwards.
Yes.
Like it's the entire like Captain America sort of stuff like that. Ooh, evil Nazis, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That Americans viewed, or just other countries, the Allies in general, would view Nazi Germany not as like everything Nazi Germany stands for is what we hate. It's an expansionist empire and we want to be the strongest one. Like take Churchill for example. Didn't necessarily. He did speak about the evils of Nazism because they were just a more extreme version of his own political ideology, and he was more of a capitalist. But he believed in like the concept of empire when it was way outdated at that point too, and so.
That's true.
Yeah, so think about
it's the same sort of imperialist, conservative sort of like tendencies that are like regoing. I think like even that sort of global trend is a reaction.
So pretty soon, in 100 years, if things don't change, if this cultural zeitgeist stays on its current path, will Churchill be looked at as an evil person? Like as not as evil as Hitler, but especially if Hitler wasn't responsible for terrible atrocities, would we read in our history books about in 100 years the National Socialist expansionist
period. They wouldn't call it they wouldn't the history books wouldn't frame it as you evil Nazis.
It wouldn't be so one-sided. That's one thing that's also really interesting is when we live in a postmodern society, all intellectual thought is based on moral relativism, so when you have a debate on like is war good, like the Vietnam War, oh no, we're doing the right thing, we're stopping the spread of communism, the ends justify the means, but no, the communists in Vietnam think they're fighting the good fight. That's why war is wrong.
And they weren't even really communists.
Yeah, and we relativize like both sides almost all the time now. Not when we think about the Nazis, not when we think about Nazi Germany. Like no one, when you watch a movie, when you watch a Vietnam War movie, usually they'll try to make it so you feel a little bad for the enemy or the Viet Cong or something because they're fighting the empire.
It's like that scene in I think like what Band of Brothers or something like, or I think it was Band of Brothers. Like it was right after the D-Day landings, and they're like, oh look at these like Nazi blocks, and it's like one of them like speaks English because he's from like Washington or Oregon or something. And he's like, oh, I'm from, some, like, small town in Washington. And he's like, no way. And he's like, and then, like, I think, like, he gets shot, like, later.
Kill him.
By that one, like, commander who, like, wants to make an impression.
Dick
Winters. Something like that. Like, but, no, like, I think going back to this whole entire idea of, like, after, like, you realize, like, after this entire, like, definitely when the U.S. was definitely, I mean, I guess you could even say, like, racially homogenized. Like, the 1950s, like, obviously Jim Crow laws were still in effect. Yeah. This was, I mean, before the civil rights movement. So definitely there was an idea of a strict, like, social structure. Like, men, go out to work. They make the money, stuff like that. Like, the women stay home. They'll make the dinner. Do whatever for the kids. Whatever's necessary, stuff like that. I mean, that only comes, like, tumbling down. Like, mid-60s, late 60s, stuff like that. Like, you realize, like, those societies are more similar than people think.
That's what I'm saying. It's one... Like, the social structure of Germany and the United States and England are almost all the same. Like, the United States is a little different because it's New World, so it has less of that aristocracy. It's more of a new money aristocracy, like the industrialist aristocracy. But definitely the social structures, like, in a racial sense, which is all that matters nowadays, were virtually the same. In fact, the Germans were evil to their minorities, which was just the Jews and Gypsies,
and the gays and retards and political dissidents.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not trying to relativize what we did, but America was hardly any better to the blacks. I mean, and we interned the Japanese. We weren't trying to murder them though, obviously. Yeah. But still, what I'm saying is when we view, I feel like you can relativize like the. And feel sympathy for like the average German soldier, Wehrmacht soldier in World War II, for fighting for the same things that the Americans were fighting for, but yet we're so propagandized to think like, no, everything to do with Nazi Germany is evil, and there's the only time we'll ever really allow collective guilt on like an average citizen is when we're talking in the context of like what the Germans did in World War II. So, we need to make all of these German civilians clean up their own city because they brought the war on themselves by tolerating a totalitarian regime that only 30% of them voted for. By the way,
that's like what Patton did, or was it Patton like go out to the concentration camps and clean up after yourselves, stuff like that. Yeah.
And I think Eisenhower was more on that than Patton was. Patton was pretty based. He actually didn't want. He wanted to take Berlin because he didn't want quote unquote the mongrel hordes of the steppes of Asia to brutalize a great race. I'm not even kidding. Something along those lines. Yeah, Patton was also pretty. He was very much a nationalist in the American sense, but the thing was, nationalism was just in the way most nationalists that exist today, they don't want, not all of them really want to go to Nazi Germany. Some of them think they do, but I'm going to speak for them. They really just want to return of society to what it was like during World War II, or even a little bit after, where it was just assumed that racial
use your words,
homogeneity was the standard, and was really just taken for granted. Like, it wasn't thought of, like now we're always talking about in sociology class, we need to get past race, and diversity is our greatest strength, and whatnot, and 2040's looming, or 2044, when it's going to be a majority minority nation in America, and
hashtag grows.
Yeah, it grows, but Yeah, I bet a lot of nationalists would rather just go back to a society like that where, yeah, we'll fight Nazis for invading other countries, but not be a post-racial, heterogeneous shit pile that we are today that is very dysfunctional. Like, you have to, even a liberal must admit, when you take on massive immigration and you try to make your country a civic society, not an ethnic one, it does come with baggage. It is an actual burden, on a collective burden on the host society to integrate. It becomes like a project, kind of like how the Brits had their national project was the empire. Like, the empire is our project, our national project to modernize the world and our colonies before we leave. Literally what they thought. It was it's kind of like American exceptionalism. This concept of greatness, like we're doing our foreign policy is a moral good.
Yeah, it's the idea of civilizing.
Yeah, that's the new moral collective project of Western societies is integration and like a synthesis of multiculturalism.
It's the same idea of like civilizing the natives.
Yeah, it's very much, and it's not
yeah.
working out too well. I mean,
Yeah.
maybe it will in the end, but it's going to come with growing pains.
I mean, if anything, it's the same trend. Like, we went out there to their world to civilize them.
Yeah,
and
reverse
now,
colonization.
Yeah, now we want to come in. We want to civilize you, but it's not. Yeah, both aspects aren't going to work out. Like they're different peoples.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, and maybe immigration would work that way if it was smaller, like in smaller increments. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'm sure. I mean, that's why inter-European like immigration works so well.
Yeah, because if a German couple has a baby in France and the baby grows up speaking German and French, but goes to a French school and lives in Paris his entire life, is basically French, and you wouldn't tell the difference. They're even the same ethnic group almost.
Well, the parents definitely have like an influence.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But I mean, I would definitely say like even like the fact that Germans living in France, like that'd be like, it's more of an idea of, okay, like I know like I have to file my taxes.
Mm-hmm.
I have to get a job.
Yeah.
Like respect, like civil, like
respect. To learn to read and write.
Yeah, which they probably already do. Unlike Syrian refugees, like most of them don't know how to read or write their own language.
Yeah, they're over half are illiterate, I think.
I mean, that's fucking gnarly. So I mean, it's definitely. I mean, they already have. I mean, while the content of the infrastructure is different, like the entire like framework of the infrastructure is similar. Mm-hmm. So they know how to be like, okay,
totally.
Okay, like I recognize that. Yeah. Like this is what I have to do.
Yeah, a Canadian can move to New York and be fine, virtually fine, and integrated, and maybe even I know Brits aren't even crazy about Polish people moving into the UK because even they're harder to integrate than like a Western Europeaner. Like I'm sure like your average working class Brit in Luton. Well, Luton's a Muslim fucking enclave now. Like I don't know,
Say
Cornwall. I don't know. Loud and proud, bro. I don't know. I don't fucking know British towns. A random British town. I'm sure your working class Joe would much rather have a Frenchman or a German move in than, say, a Ukrainian or a Polish person, because even that is pretty different. Even though they might look close.
Slavs.
Yeah. Or a Southern European, even like a Greek or a Portuguese.
Portuguese.
Portuguese. Yeah. You know what I mean?
No, but like, I definitely think like a lot of this is the cause, because like I mean we were talking about earlier how like like definitely like America's 50 society, Germany's 30 society, more similar than you think. I think when you see that all like toppling down like late 60s, like you have this huge cultural revolution. I mean it goes down already on sexual fronts. People start doing drugs, smoking weed, which I mean back in the day was mad reefer sort of things, and they even go farther. They go into like hallucinogenic drugs, stuff like that. I mean, people start doing crazy fucking art exhibits. They know that people people are like, oh my god, is that fucking art? No, it's not. But like it's like that has now become the establishment. Like you realize like baby boomers are now the ones in power.
Yeah.
Like they grew up with that. That's their idea of like oh yeah if like my two gay friends want to go out, like that's not really a big deal for me.
Mm-hmm. Me either, yeah.
I mean, yeah. For us, honestly, it's obviously not a big deal. Like, I really don't care. Like, I get along with most gay people I meet, but I mean, like that has become the establishment to such an extent. I mean, and in Quebec, I mean that continues on to of course the X generation stuff like that. I mean, they're essentially nurtured by that kind of idea that I mean, this sort of that the leftist establishment is more resonant and sort of things like that. I mean, by that time, I think the silent generation was still more in power.
Mm-hmm.
But by the time the millennials come up, definitely the baby boomers are the ones running government.
Yeah.
They're the ones running finance. I mean, they're the ones. I mean, they're just ones on all the genuine positions of power in the country. So I think. I think definitely like Sticks, Hex and Hammer was right about this. We're like, now is the time. We're like, all right, like the Gen Zs, folks, like, you can't go any more left after this. Like, you realize like
the dysfunction's getting pretty apparent.
Like we had gay marriage, which of course I mean any normal person realizes like
isn't a huge deal.
Yeah, isn't a huge deal. Like
but we do realize that but we're starting to like the Gen Z, your average Gen Z person that's slightly socially aware might recognize on paper 2 people of the same sex getting married isn't a big deal, but we're kind of seeing that philosophy the philosophy that pushed that is also pushing like a breakdown of traditional marriage in general. So like we know what the couple is. So like you and I wouldn't care about the progressive idea that 2 men can have kids or raise a family or be a couple that's married.
Like adopt kids.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, they can't have kids.
Which they can't in France actually.
Really?
Yeah, that's actually surprising. That's how conservative their society is. Yeah.
But anyway, but that, like, we wouldn't care about that, but we're going to oppose the broader movement because we know that broader movement wants a total destruction of marriage as an institution as it is now. And people in Gen Z, Generation Z, I should say, I keep saying Gen Z, I don't know why I'm doing that. They, or, you and I basically would say, I'm not even going to get involved in a gay marriage argument because I know that's not what the argument's about. We have gay marriage. I literally don't give a shit.
It's accepted at this time.
What I want to fight is like polyamory and like kids growing up with parents who are more focused on their sex life than child rearing, which is now going to become an issue probably. We've seen like the single mothers were definitely a Gen X thing mostly for the most part because millennials aren't having kids at all, but Gen X moms that are focusing on their careers get a divorce because they're, more career oriented. They're going to raise a kid by themselves, and that kid is a daycare generation. There's that whole daycare generation dysfunction that we're dealing with now. But I think what we might see in the future, and this should be interesting, is when millennials are having these polyamorous, weird, experimental families.
It's not biological. Literally,
what's
just
that
goes
kid going to
against
be
biology.
like? How's a kid that has a mom and a dad biologically, but has like 2 other male figures in the life? I know this doesn't happen on a broad scale, but it exists. It's out there. It's a cosmopolitan thing that's starting to happen, unless there's an actual revolt against it. I mean, you can just see it on Vice.com. They'll push this shit, and I think that's probably why people like you and me are just pushing against it. Like we've taken what we need from progressives, but we're taking what works and we're resisting the rest. We're like, fuck that.
Even like gay marriage, like literally, like if 2 guys were like fucking next door, like we wouldn't know.
Yeah, or give a shit, really.
Yeah. Like honestly, who cares? Like the fact that they get married is literally just the rubber stamp to kind of just like end the deal. Like really doesn't like the fact that they even get married doesn't even like physically like or directly even affect us.
Yeah.
But the fact that it goes into like sort of tranny stuff like that, or like like multiple genders sort of stuff like that,
and being physically compelled by the state to respect made up pronouns. Shit like that.
I mean, not even by the state, but even by like private entities, because that's where it's worse. Like I think a lot of people. I think a lot of people like definitely when it comes to like fake news today, stuff like that. A lot of people people are afraid of big government, but they really should be afraid of big business more.
Yeah, if you see what's going on Twitter and censorship and whatnot.
Stuff like that. I mean, because it's more in the private sector that you're gonna face like sort of like, did you just make a gay joke? Like, did you just insult Paul? And his life partner?
Mm-hmm.
Like people get fired for that stuff. Like,
his life partner, and it makes sense because that's not even coming from a consumer standpoint. Like if you look at the retarded fucking Pepsi ad or the Super Bowl's Budweiser's commercial. Budweiser usually has a nice, classy commercial with a horse that it's American working men will love. Yeah, but they did this immigrant story as a big middle finger to Donald Trump.
So
who the
gross.
fuck do you think drinks your beer?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's not, they're not, when they're doing this like pro-gay progressive agenda and whatnot and censoring your words, it's not even coming from, oh, we're afraid of the outrage in the marketplace. Like, no, it's because millennials are finally taking jobs in marketing and ad making and
Gross.
advertising and whatnot, and
So
that's
gross.
where the push is. They're so brain dead. Like,
no, it's so post material.
Yeah.
Like it's so post material that they literally like definitely when it comes to like Budweiser stuff like that. Like yeah, obviously that's not their market, and I mean even most like young liberal progressive folks are probably down in like San Diego drinking their own like
exactly.
craft beers.
That's what I was
stuff
about
like
to
that.
say.
They're not gonna buy like Keystone or
Yeah,
like stuff
yeah.
like that. Yeah.
And Pepsi is a working class soda. That's who it's advertised to. Coke is like the high class one, and then I'm not even kidding. Pepsi's traditional market is like the South, and you just did this stupid anti-cop. That's gonna go down in history as like, not only did you miss the mark, you're trying, while trying to reach out to like a new base, you fucking alienated your other one, so you just fucked yourself. I mean, I doubt it'll actually affect sales, but
I mean,
their overall, their corporate image is fucked. That's for sure for the foreseeable future.
I mean, this is like I don't even think it's like that. Like their corporate image is even fucked, or maybe it affects sales because I think it's just. I mean, you have to realize it relatively. It's like this entire issue, like economic growth is like stumbling down to 2% for like all Western nations.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's more of a global trend. Like
Yeah.
probably like a lot of like Pepsi, Coke, like all these sort of big companies are probably all, like marketing to the wrong like just kind of the wrong markets or like consumer bases. So I mean they're all probably like at the same time relatively declining. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like sale, profit margin might have been at like 15% or whatever, but now it's all down for 10% just because they all have the wrong idea.
Yeah.
Like they're all convinced and they're all getting all their like sales marketing teams or whatever
From like chicks that went to that.
or just I don't know just from groups that don't really
Yeah.
don't understand just don't understand like the forces that are going on today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they don't really have a cultural foresight.
Yeah, but I think it's like this like definitely like this sort of post material like values like rights for trannies stuff like that. When I mean really it's almost sort of I think it definitely is like literally people are being it's the whole entire like John Oliver Trevor Noah effect, like being told your own political values.
Yeah.
Like watch this show so you can
Spoon-fed.
Yeah, like literally spoon-fed so people can tell themselves they have a reason, like, oh, I fight for this.
Mm-hmm.
When really, like, physically, like, in their own community and the way they commute, like, oh, maybe they go to school, they go to work, they go to a party, stuff like that. Really, like, those issues don't even affect them.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
they're literally taking it on for probably for another, like, selfish, like, ego reason.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they realize, like, harness to their own political views should be definitely something that's, affects their community, like, physically, really, like, oh, like I go to work and my friend Chad's gay and he's like afraid that he's afraid he can't like go and like make a move on some like guy he likes or something, like, oh, I care for my friend Chad, like, or whatever. Like it should be mostly focused on that. But I think like definitely like the society's gotten to the point where it's so post material and it's so based on that sort of thinking that we're gonna sway back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, naturally. There's no way we can go further.
Yeah, literally just the biological limits of human stupidity have been reached.
Yeah. Like our conceptual space for gross cognitive dissonance. Like, yeah, trannies are fine, and then you see a tranny breastfeeding with a chick with a dick. Breastfeeding, or a dude with a vagina with a beard breastfeeding. That's peak fucking degeneracy. Like, and the fact that you and me just saying that could make us lose our job, not because a majority of people don't agree with us and think we're terrible fucking neo-Nazis, but because our boss is probably a Gen X or a millennial, or like the corporate ladder is filled with people like that who think people think like them because they're in a bubble and they don't. They want to moralize instead of put profit. Like if society, most of society did think seeing a transgender bearded woman breastfeeding on the street was genuinely not hideous, then I could understand why people get fired for saying, ew, gross, that's so gross. But I don't. Most people might say if they're interviewed, oh yeah, it's beautiful, yeah. But
yeah, like,
definitely deep
down.
They've
been taught, like literally psychologically taught to moralize.
Yeah, but I bet deep down they know it's fucking gross. It's probably kind of why Trump won too, against the polls. Like,
we'll talk about Trump another time.
Yeah,
Trump is his own topic in itself.
For sure, but yeah, just...
No, but I definitely think the sort of idea. I mean, it's different back in the day. Like when we look at the Nazis, like the beginning of our discussion, like obviously they're facing new modern issues that they had never even like thought of before, like economic catastrophe. Like, oh, who even fucking saw that coming? Like, I mean, you know, people talk about, you know, in the U.S. the Roaring '20s, so everything was so great, like that even happened in Germany. Like they were still dealing with like fucking like huge protests, like soldiers, like disgruntled troops, like, oh, we could have fucking won, god damn it. Like they were facing entire issues of modernism, stuff like that, and I think, I mean, definitely not we have the same, but I think like when it comes, like definitely the recession definitely had an effect on that. Like it's bringing up all these kind of issues, and I mean, in my opinion, definitely when you see like Trump, like one of his first things he did was like repeal some measures of Dodd-Frank. Like I definitely think we're having a minor bump, and like definitely, you know, Gen Z is all projected to be like super, I mean, conservative as the silent generation, stuff like that. Like I think definitely when we see this removal of like financial measures and stuff like that, because Trump is obviously, said we didn't talk about Trump, but I'll skip Trump. But like I definitely think we're gonna have a little bump, and then we're gonna go down to a bigger slide. I definitely think that's what's gonna happen.
An economic slide.
I mean, economics is the way we can quantize it. I mean, because that
or a cultural, like an overall. Like,
yeah, like I use economics because that's really what's only quantifiable. Like 15%.
Like a slide back to the right, or a slide like
slide back to the right, definitely.
Oh,
like,
okay.
Like obviously.
I thought you meant like, oh, Trump repealing Dodd-Frank's gonna make us have a fucking calamitous economic.
No, that's what
disaster.
I mean, that's what I'm. No, that is what I'm saying. But the thing is, like, I think that the recession was the little bump that that's going to force us to go to the right, and I think definitely that, I mean, not even that. I mean, to a certain extent, it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I think we're going to have a bigger bump down the road.
A bigger economic bump.
I definitely think so.
And that'll make people go more to the right.
Yeah, I definitely think. Yeah, I mean.
Or left. I mean, a freak accident could happen like it did in Russia, and somehow the left, like the far left Marxists, could take over it.
I mean,
it's really whoever seizes power.
I don't think it'll take the form of like Marxists. I definitely think the right needs its time to shine. Yeah. Because you realize, like, if you look at the left today, I mean, the left today has no voice. They're literally, it's literally anti-Trump, anti-Trump, anti-Trump. They have no message to send. They have no message to even put out there anymore. They can't say, oh, you know, we want a single-payer health system. No one's saying that. Yeah. I mean, the only one to say that was kind of Bernie. But I mean, you know, he's dead because he has really no leadership abilities. I mean, let's be serious here. Yeah. I mean. Yeah. So I think definitely when we see the left has no message, I think the right has its time to make a resurgence. And the fact that, I mean, definitely the liberal media and everything, like,
and the far right too, by the way, just side note. Like the far right is the one that's making the message. Like not the center right, which not the center.
Yeah,
the center isn't going to come back.
Neocons are dead, obviously. Yeah. I mean,
well, they always find a way to get their war, but yeah, as a popular political philosophy, no, it's both. The center's definitely dead, and the far left in America for sure has fucked itself. Yeah. By just letting, like, honestly, like letting feminism be feminism and Black Lives Matter is the leader
politics.
of
yeah. Like, you realize you're literally, I mean, pandering to, I mean, a very small percent of the population. I mean, at least in the U.S., I mean, what, blacks are like 11-15% of the population. Like, that's a voting bloc, definitely, but it's not going to win you elections. No. I mean, pandering to women, I mean, frankly, I mean, yeah, I mean, definitely that could work. And I definitely don't think, like, we should shit on women's rights. I honestly think that's a really important message, that if the right really wants to continue, I think it definitely should promise, like, women's rights really strongly. But obviously, like, Hillary Clinton literally got less support for women than, like, I think Trump won more.
Trump won more white women, but that's just naturally because in American politics, minorities always vote for the Democrat. But when you look at the broader.
Well, she won less women than Obama did, I think.
She did. Yeah, she got less female votes than Obama did. But
she obviously wasn't able to galvanize identity politics, even to the certain extent that, I mean, Obama even didn't try to. Yeah. He was black without saying it. Exactly. That was his greatest victory, frankly.
Yeah. What's weird is I think the left in America got a high from 8 years of Obama, who was pretty progressive. He would always have a centrist aesthetic.
Yeah, he was like a center-left sort of, like...
Yeah. But his core philosophy was, like, anti-colonialism and stuff like that, and a rescaling of America's overreach and whatnot, and definitely on even progressive, like, women's issues, minority issues. He's pretty progressive. But he only won because of the broken coalition in an American election, because turnout is really what decides it, not who's more popular. It's who's more popular and their potential voters actually give a fuck about them. So come out to vote, because American voters barely ever vote. Isn't it only 100 million or something, or 120 million vote?
That's not even 50% shit.
Yeah. So Hillary Clinton. So when you have someone like Obama, who a bunch of he had like the greatest coalition anyone could ask for. He had 90-something% of black voters and high black turnout to vote for him. Blacks actually do have a high turnout, which is kind of odd if you think about it. They have a very high turnout rate.
Well, I think they've just been galvanized lately with Black Lives Matter. So I mean, that's just I think like that is an important demographic, but they're just not large enough to make. I mean, there's not large enough to like make a huge impact.
But the like academic left, the institutions that leftists inhabit, they definitely had a high for 8 years of thinking that their philosophy was popular and the way of the future, and everyone just accepted it. And they really kind of ignored the fact that Obama was just a good candidate that could win a general election because of his broad appeal. Like, it is a popularity contest. So, I mean, if you even look at, he lost the House in 2010 and then lost the Senate slowly but surely and became lame ducked in 2014. He
was lame ducked by 2012. Like, let's be serious.
In all honesty, yeah. And it's because the core demographic of America, white America, is still not on par with the left. Like, they don't agree. There's no.
Yeah, I mean, where the states matter, like Ohio. I mean, Pennsylvania. Like, to bring it up, like seriously, like Michigan. What is it? Not Minnesota, Montana, stuff like that.
Oh, Wisconsin and Michigan, Wisconsin,
Virginia, North Carolina.
Losing your traditional base because you just thought progressivism was the popular. Like, there was no cathartic moment for the left. They thought after Obama there was going to be Hillary, and there was just going to be a nice ease into, political dominance for the next half century, because Obama was a leftist that would dog whistle to them. But they kind of just ignored the fact that all he was the president. They lost the other branch of. He was
such just a figurehead.
Yeah, but that's all they had. I mean, they're and they have like this, the media is their propaganda arm. This is where really fucked him up, was the media thought because Obama was so popular that his ideas were popular necessarily, or the left's ideas were popular, and so they really kind of shoved it down people's throats. Like, if you look at the acceleration of how Americans treated socialism and just where the Overton window was in 2008, and then where the left genuinely thought it was in 2016, is insane. Like, it's basically the same as it was in 2008 as it is now, but because Obama won, they think we're 8 years down the progressive road when we're maybe like 2 years down it, and so that's why there's such a just an insane like level of cognitive dissonance in the left. That's why they're protesting. The youth. I'm talking about the real, like, what they would identify themselves as progressive intellectuals and stuff.
Like the millennial Gen X leftists.
Yeah, like college-educated millennials and leftists.
I think it's definitely true, because if you even look at like the campaign slogans, like yes we can, or like hope, stuff like that, it's all about change, and like, make America great again. This is all about change. Like, there's not like, it's not like like John McCain's country first, like let's keep on going where we're at, like stuff like that. Like, but obviously there's like people, like there's definitely an idea of change that people want that wasn't being nurtured.
It was the wrong kind of change. Actually,
at least, like, I'm sure if Obama got like single payer and he got like gun control, he'd probably be way more popular.
Yeah.
Like, not even
everyone.
Not even saying that those measures would have worked, or even that like gun control is a good idea, but just saying that even the fact that it would happen, people would have been like, oh yeah, let's get Obama like third term, like stuff like that, like 4 more years.
Yeah, and what's weird is when Obama run, he was like the anti-globalist, anti-establishment. The first election, he was the globalism in the sense of outsourcing jobs and foreign wars. He kind of grew into the role of being like one of those. Like, I think being the president naturally makes you become more of an internationalist. If you know what I mean. But what he ran on was, you could be the overall. I I don't want to say philosophy, but the feeling, his meme, like what he wanted people to feel, the the main persuasive force was things are going to be different now. Like, I'm going to fix things. Because we used to be great, and America used to be a shining city on a hill, it used to be a paradise, and now there's all this dysfunction, and I don't think Americans really know. That's why the vanguard movements of the far left and the far right are really important. Like, the intellectual fights will be fought on the margins, and then the majority of Americans
will just kind of like look and like
be pushed to whoever's winning the argument or proposing the best argument. They won't really believe it, but I think a lot of Americans are susceptible to the we're socially dysfunctional because of progressivism and diversity, while Obama was more, it's because of our economic policy and our economy's dysfunctional. That's literally what he said, I think. Our economy's dysfunctional and it's leaving good Americans behind, and that's why we aren't living. That's why you're not. Basically, it's why you're not able to buy 2 SUVs and a flat screen like you were in the 80s and 90s. In reality, it's because we have like more global competition, and they're just eating more of the pie.
Yeah, that's why stagflation happened in the 70s.
Yeah. But in reality, or not reality, but I think just as many people that could buy into our economics are what it is functional in America, those same amount of people could be bought in, sold on the idea that it's our culture and it's progressivism that's making our society dysfunctional, and we need to return to what Trump said back in the good old days when a protester would get his ass kicked and then thrown out of a rally. You know what I mean?
And people wouldn't fucking throw a fit over it. Like, oh, you punched that black guy, you fucking racist.
Exactly.
Like, no, he was being a little
But
dick.
the same people that kind of like, I do like those days when people could do that. They're the same ones that could be sold on Obama's message of, I remember the good old days when Americans loved each other and we didn't have protesters in the crowd. Like, Americans, or not just Americans, populations in countries in general are very susceptible to the
even
peripheries.
Obama didn't really sell an era message. Like, a lot of his speeches are always like little Melinda from like Ohio, stuff like that. It's always like personal stories. He didn't
Bill Clinton's the fuck out of it.
Like he doesn't like sell like a era message, which is like obviously what Trump does. Like, he definitely sells it like oh, we're gonna go back to fucking not internationalism, but we're gonna go back to a time where America was like leader in the world that made 50% of the world's GDP. Yeah.
If he can make it even seem like we're going back to that, he'll win re-election.
I'm already convinced he's gonna win re-election. Honestly.
We said we wouldn't talk about Trump, but how can you not?
Yeah, I know,
he's just
Trump.
So based.
I know, he's so red-pilled.
Yeah. Well, should we wrap it up? Keep going.
No, I think we're good. If you're still listening on this first podcast, we thank you.
Yeah, this is a beta test. We just want to see if what we talk about is interesting to other people, because we think it's pretty fucking interesting. But
please comment, and if you're so fucking like happy with your own little fucking dick rubbing, you can like it and subscribe.
Yeah. Maybe you can hang out with us one day
if you're cool enough. But otherwise, this channel probably is mostly going to be like a test channel. So of course, if anything happens,
I'm saying our real names.
Yeah. Greg.
Just like, shut up, Kyle.
Fuck Kyle. This is test channel. So if anything happens, or if you guys like us, I'll probably make some sort of announcement, like, oh, we're gonna make this other channel that we actually try on, and make sort of like cover image sort of stuff like that. But otherwise, thank you guys for listening. You guys are based.